Hi everyone, Susan Storm here, and today we're going to be talking about 7 signs that you are dealing with an unhealthy INFJ. So INFJs are known as the mystics, and they're a very rare personality type, and at their best they are visionaries, they're counselors, they're people who really want to make the world better for the people inside it. They're great at empathizing, they're great at strategizing, and you'll often find them in various either spiritual realms, psychological fields, or even the arts, where they can put their intuition and creativity together to really reach people on a very deep level. So, how do they look when they're unhealthy? Let's get started and find out. So, one of the first signs that you're dealing with an unhealthy INFJ is that they're very impractical. Unhealthy INFJs are so obsessed with the intuitive realm because it's really what gives them energy in life, but the consequence is that they're really dismissing extroverted sensing. So anything from the sensing realm, the things that are tangible, experience-based, things that they can know and trust through their senses. So when INFJs are healthy, they have a great relationship between their intuition and their sensing side. So they have these great insights, they have these great imaginative ideas, and they're divining these future possibilities, but at the same time, they do things like spend time in nature, they test their insights against facts they know from the real world. Maybe they bring their ideas to people and get feedback. Maybe they enjoy having experiences that get them immersed in their senses, and they enjoy being grounded. So a healthy INFJ is going to have a healthy relationship between their intuitive side and their sensing side, because these make up the spine of their personality type. And everyone knows you can't be healthy if you don't have a healthy spine. Next, unhealthy INFJs can be very, very stubborn. Because INFJs are naturally very visionary types, they're very focused on kind of honing and perfecting this one incredible vision for their life. They tend to, if they're unhealthy, disregard anything that would not align with their vision. Anything that would be a critique of that, anything that would change it. And so if someone comes in with other possibilities, like, oh, hey, that's a great idea, but have you thought of this? They might be very dismissive or even condescending, like, I already thought of that. I already, don't even bother bringing it up. Or if someone comes in with like sensing-based facts, like, hey, have you thought about this practical reality that might get in the way of this? They can also kind of shut that down. And that, again, can happen when INFJs are quieting other parts of their cognitive function stack to stay fully in their introverted intuition. And when an INFJ is healthy, they look at all the different perspectives when they're moving forward. They look at their intuition, but they also look at the feeling element. How is it going to impact people? They're going to look at the thinking element. Is it logically consistent? They're going to look at the sensing element. What are the facts and details involved? They're going to do all of that. But an unhealthy INFJ is going to really stay in their intuition and be like, I know this is the path I need to take. I know this is where I need to get forward. I'm going to put 100% of what I have behind that. And then when someone says, well, have you thought about this detail? Or have you thought about this logical inconsistency here that might trip you up later? Unhealthy INFJs can be very dismissive of that. Another sign that you're dealing with an unhealthy INFJ is that they're extremely reclusive and isolated. So INFJs are introverts, and we all know introverts need alone time. Of course they do. And so I'm not talking about an INFJ who's taking a couple hours a day to recharge, or an INFJ who's canceling a plan every once in a while. That's fairly normal stuff. And I think everyone needs to do that sometimes. I'm talking about an INFJ who is really detached from the external world. They're not going out at all if they can help it. And they're not testing their ideas with people. They're not talking about their ideas with people to get input or feedback. They're not receptive to feedback. They are not going and experiencing things. These INFJs, because they are pulling away, what's probably happening is they're stuck in what we call an NITI loop, where their mind is cycling back and forth between introverted intuition and introverted thinking. And so they're extrapolating these possibilities, and then they're really getting into like critiquing and trying to analyze and perfect their vision and their idea, but they're not actually testing it in the real world, and they're not getting feedback, and they're pulling more and more and more away into the world of imagination, into the world of insight, into the world of kind of this logical piecing apart of their ideas. This might seem really fun for an INFJ, And I think there's nothing wrong with having periods of time where you pull away and you have a little bit of time just in your introverted realm. It becomes a problem when it's just constant, when you find yourself becoming less and less receptive to input and feedback from others, and when you find yourself kind of feeling ungrounded and untethered from reality and from people or community. Because there's not a feeling of, I'm finally getting the recharge time I need. It's more of, I'm really in my ideas and stuff, but I kind of forgot to eat for 3 days, and I'm out of touch with my body, and I don't really have any, I'm finding myself really defensive when anyone talks to me about a different idea or a different possibility. You start seeing these things in yourself, it's possible that you are in what we call the NITI loop, and there are ways to get out of that. We're going to flip to the other end of the unhealthy INFJ and talk about what happens when INFJs become too focused on other people and what they need and what they think. So INFJs have this amazing cognitive function called extroverted feeling. Extroverted feeling is very attuned to interpersonal dynamics. It's very conscious of how people feel emotionally and the emotional wavelengths that are going on in the atmosphere around the INFJ. This is where a lot of INFJs get the term empath. It's a combination of their extroverted feeling combined with their introverted intuition. INFJs are really good at shifting perspectives. They're really good at absorbing emotions, sometimes without even knowing they're doing it. And they really care about getting people's needs met. What happens though is sometimes this gets taken to an extreme, and they become hyper fixated on being everything to everyone and pleasing the people in their lives to this really extreme degree where they kind of lose themselves in the process and they become codependent, where they're trying to solve everyone else's problems for them and essentially robbing themselves of their own needs and maybe robbing the other people of agency to take care of their own emotions. And a lot of people will notice this tendency of INFJs to be amazing counselors, to be amazing listeners, to be very empathetic, and they will latch on to that in order to get as much emotional support as they can, or emotional input. And some people, it's almost never enough. And so some people call them as like leeches. They'll like just drain the INFJ of all their energy as the INFJ tries to give and give and give in order to help this other person with their emotions. And unhealthy INFJs, they usually don't start out that way, this way, but it's like they are so empathic sometimes that they just give and give and give till they're totally depleted, but they don't know when to stop. And so this codependency is another sign that you're dealing with an unhealthy INFJ. Sign number 5, we talked about codependency, but this unhealthy INFJ is also, they've lost themselves. Another type of unhealthy INFJ has just completely lost themselves. In the process of over-giving to others, they have forgotten who they are. They stand for what they need. This INFJ can look completely exhausted. They can look out of touch with their body. They don't have the same visionary, insightful calmness that a healthy INFJ will have. Instead, they can look like they're running around in a million different directions, trying to take care of everybody else. This INFJ is one that really needs to pull back and give space and oxygen to their intuition. This is an INFJ that needs, take a silent retreat for a week so they can get back into touch with who they are and figure out what they need. Things like journaling, meditation, quiet time alone, these are really important to this particular type of unhealthy INFJ. Another sign that an INFJ is unhealthy is that they are extremely perfectionistic. They have this intuitive vision of something they want to achieve or someone they want to be or an ideal they want to reach, and it feels like they can never get there because it's just never perfect enough. Maybe they have an idea for a company or maybe a nonprofit, okay? And they are putting so much thought into having it line up exactly how they want that it never gets its feet off the ground because they're too perfectionistic. They're too tied to this exquisite, pristine vision, and that they won't be happy with anything else. This is the INFJ who wants to write a book, but they spend 20 years writing it, and they never publish it, and they never show anyone a chapter of it because it must be perfect. So that's another sign that an INFJ is unhealthy, and sometimes this can be helped when they have a better relationship, again, with all their cognitive functions. So an INFJ who is really stuck in their introverted intuitive vision of what this project or this idea or ideal needs to be can sometimes get stuck in that perfectionism. But when they start just moving through trial and error and integrating some extroverted sensing into their life, then they can start playing around with putting their ideas out into the world. Like, you know what? This chapter isn't perfect, but let me show it to a few friends and get feedback. Or, you know what? This business idea I have, this nonprofit, I was making a logo for it and it's not amazing, but let me just work with it for now and keep going and keep building what I can and know that it won't be perfect. These are things that are really important for an INFJ to be able to do, to just kind of experiment and try out things without them having to be perfect all the time. All right, so the last sign, again, there's probably way more than this, but one of the last signs that you're dealing with in INFJ is that they are impulsive and reckless, and they are basically not acting like themselves at all. Now, this is a different type of unhealthiness than what we've been talking about previously in this video. So there's a type of stress called grip stress, and and INFJs experience this when they are overdoing it, when they're stressed. So there's a problem, and they're leaning on introverted intuition to try to solve the problem. So say there's a relationship problem, their sister's in trouble, and they're really trying to solve this. They're spending a lot of time reflecting, meditating on the problem, ruminating about the problem, brainstorming about the problem, writing down possible solutions to the problem. They're just going overboard trying to solve this problem and nothing's helping. Or maybe they're sick, so they have the flu and they're a parent, so they can't sleep and they can't heal themselves, so they're just exhausted. And what happens when INFJs experience this really chronic or extreme bout of stress is that sometimes they overwork their preferred functions, so intuition and feeling, they overwork them to the point of exhaustion. And then the inferior function, which for INFJs is extroverted sensing, kind of bubbles up from the bottom and takes over. And when this happens, the INFJ stops looking like a normal INFJ. They stop looking calm and insightful and empathetic, and instead they start behaving very recklessly, very impulsively. They become much more hot-tempered and quickly to react to things, and they become much more focused on physical indulgences, whether sometimes that means overeating, sometimes it means drinking too much, sometimes it means like exercising way too much, but they become hyper aware of the extroverted sensing inferior function that they have. And this can make them very impulsive. Like maybe they just blow all their money on a last minute trip to California or something, or they go to the store and spend a ton of money, or they empty out their pantry and eat all the junk food. So this is a sign that you're dealing with an INFJ who is in the grip of their inferior function. Now, we talked a lot about all these unhealthy aspects, but what do you do about it? What if you're an INFJ and you're like, okay, I see parts of myself in all of this, or only here or there. What can you do to try to help yourself in this situation? Well, we'll start with the end. If you are in a grip stress place, then obviously first confronting the physical stress you're dealing with is important. So this can mean taking deep breaths. It's amazing how much breathing can actually do to improve your quality of thought. So practice taking deep breaths. Learn about box breathing and different types of stress relieving breathing techniques. There's so many different kinds, and when you calm down your body, it actually is like telling your mind that it can calm down as well. Visualizing things that are calming to you, coming up with a list of like, these are things that I can visualize to help me calm down when I'm really stressed out. That can also be really helpful. Confronting the physical stress is always the first thing you should do when you're feeling really, really stressed out. But then you need to move on from that into maybe getting support. As an INFJ, being able to talk to someone who's understanding and trustworthy is really important. So maybe talking to a counselor or a trusted friend or family member can help. Another thing is journaling. A lot of INFJs find that if they journal their frustrations and their feelings and then read that back to themselves, and they can process what's going on and be able to cope with it a little bit better. There's many things you can do about grip stress, and I have an article about that which I will try to link to in the information for the video below. Now, the other way to just make sure you're healthy is to look at all your preferences, all your cognitive functions. We all have access to intuition and sensing, thinking, and feeling. So when you are feeling one-sided, you might need to look at which part of yourself are you dismissing, which part of yourself are you devaluing. And this can be a way that you can course correct and get right back on the path that you need to be. For example, if you're an INFJ who's really isolated, you're really perfectionistic, and you're not putting your content out there, you're not putting your ideas and dreams out there into the world and really doing anything with them, that's probably a sign that you're out of touch with the extroverted part of your personality type. So that probably means you are feeling a little bit ungrounded. Maybe you need to go out and spend some time in nature. Maybe you need to get together with a friend for coffee and share your ideas with them. Maybe you need to, I don't know, just go on a drive or listen to some music or go to a movie and hear someone else's story. But just push yourself to get out in the external world a little bit more than you have been, and then keep building from there. But perhaps you're an INFJ who is on the other side of the spectrum, and you're like really pushing yourself and you're exhausting yourself for other people. This is where you need to be able to learn how to set healthy boundaries and make promises to yourself that you will respect your need for alone time, and make an effort to see yourself as a person that needs to be taken care of. It's very easy for INFJs to see everyone else as someone that counts. Everyone else is someone that matters. I've spoke to an INFJ once who was in a really difficult work situation where it was really physically unhealthy for her. But she didn't want to quit because it could put other people out. And what she needed to realize was that she actually counted, and that she would never treat anyone else as badly as she treats herself. So the process of seeing yourself as a person that counts and as a person that is important is hugely important to INFJs, so that you can learn to set healthy boundaries and learn to respect and take care of your own needs and not just give until you're exhausted to everyone else. So these are just a few things to remember as you try to move forwards towards being the healthier version of yourself. You can find many more articles on being an INFJ, or any of the 16 personality types on my website at psychologyjunkie.com. I also have written a book for INTJs called book for INFJs called The INFJ Understanding the Mystic. And there's a ton of information in there about knowing how your mind works, dealing with relationships, being a parent, understanding your cognitive functions, being in the workplace, and so many other things. So you can check that book out as well, and there will be a link in the description. Thanks so much. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.